Hello and welcome to another session from elttraining.com. Today's session is an introduction to the phonemic chart, what it is, why it can be helpful and how you and your students can learn it. This picture shows it at its edible best, I have to say. It was the brainchild of one of my CELTA trainees, so thanks Becky. So what do we mean when we talk about the phonemic chart? The image that you've probably seen comes from a bigger set of symbols called the IPA, which stands for the International Phonetic Alphabet. This is a way of describing all of the sounds that humans use in language. So these things along the top, bilabial means two lips. So sounds that you make with your two lips, for example, and plosive is kind of an explosive sound, so p and b are bilabial plosives, for example. You don't need to know all of this stuff, although it is quite interesting. I certainly wouldn't teach it to your learners, but it is quite interesting as a teacher, I have to say. Nasal sounds, for example, are ones that you make in your nasal cavity, like for example. You can see that. So these are all the sounds, well actually this is a part of it, but these are the sounds that it's possible for humans to make. Now you can see there are some shaded out areas because these just aren't physically possible. But not all of these sounds are in English. Clearly there are lots of sounds which exist in some languages which don't exist in other languages. And so not all of these sounds will be on the chart that you've probably seen for English. Okay, but these are the sounds that it's possible to make, so they'll exist in some language somewhere. There is a question as to what's the difference between phonemic or phonetic. So in case you're wondering, phonetics is the study of speech sounds. So I think that's why it's the International Phonetic Alphabet, because it's all speech sounds it's possible to make. Whereas generally the chart for English is called the phonemic chart because a phoneme is each basic sound unit. So b, for example, is one phoneme. You can't get any smaller than that. So these are the phonemes which are in a particular language. I have to say I wouldn't get too hung up on this though. Anyway, moving on. This is what you've probably seen before. This is the phonemic chart for standard British English. Now that's important because you might be looking at this and go, well, I make a sound and it's not on here. Why are my sounds on this? If you're American, for example, the a in cat, the way that you say that, isn't on this chart. And it isn't on this chart because this is the standard British English, RP, received pronunciation chart. So there may well be some sounds on here that you make that are perfectly acceptable clearly that aren't on this chart, and that's why. So if that's happening to you, if you're going, but I'm making, I can't see what sound corresponds to what I say, that's why. So a good question to start with is this one. Why learn this? We've already got letters, we can already express what's, some English. Why am I going to learn this? Well, there are some good reasons to learn it. One of the big advantages is that it captures the intangible. Now, if you're learning a language like Spanish, for example, or Italian, or Swahili, or many other languages, what you see on the paper is what you say. And so actually you don't need this kind of thing. But if you're learning English, or French, for example, is another example, there are lots of times, many times, when the spelling, for historical reasons, doesn't correspond with the sound. And so it's helpful to have something that can capture actually what is said. For learners, this allows them to make a clear record of something. If they've written down the correct spelling of something, they may well not remember how to say it. And if they know how to write this chart, the symbols, then they can make a record that they can remember and refer back to. It's useful for correction. I think if you're trying to explain to someone that it's not shit, it's shirt, and you can show them the symbol that corresponds to the sound, that can be helpful. So it can be useful in that kind of way. And of course it helps a lot with dictionaries. If the learner knows these symbols, they can use a dictionary and they can find out themselves how something is pronounced. So it does promote learner independence. Clearly they can also do this online probably very easily these days, and also, you know, on phones and all sorts of things. There's all sorts of kind of ways in which pronunciation can be given to learners. So, you know, potentially that's less of an issue, I suppose, nowadays. The other thing that I think it's really helpful for is that it shows the effect of connected speech, and we'll look at this later on. But it's difficult to show this otherwise. I'm not going to go into this now, we will look at it later. Of course, though, there are some problems. So, you know, the disadvantages, the big one is that you need to learn it. And the other big one is, of course, that they need to learn it. And, you know, this is a significant amount of effort. Some nationalities tend to know it. Most of your Japanese students, most of your Chinese students will already know it. They will have learnt it in school. So if you've got learners, you know, classes with a significant number of those kind of learners in, you really do need to learn it because it will be able to be useful to them. Generally speaking, people from Europe don't learn it or haven't learnt it, but that doesn't mean that they can't, you know. And I think it is a significant amount of learning, but it's not that onerous. And I think it is useful, but I think people who come from a Roman alphabet often perceive that it's not necessary. So that's something maybe to contend with. I think that if you've got people who are learning a Roman alphabet, so if they come from a non-Roman alphabet and they are not very comfortable with that non-Roman alphabet, with a Roman alphabet, sorry, then I probably wouldn't bother to teach it to them, because it's just adding extra, you know, literary stress, if you like. And if people have got a low level of literacy in their own language and they're learning sort of literacy for a first time, I definitely wouldn't bother to introduce it, because I think it's just confusing the issue. But where you have people who are literate, especially if they have a Roman alphabet or are comfortable with the Roman alphabet, then I really do think it's worth looking at. So let's have a look at how it's divided. So there is order to this. There are consonants, they are here. There are vowels, they are here. And in this corner over here, we've got diphthongs. Okay, so that's how the thing is divided. There is order to it. If we look at these things individually, these are the consonants. Now, these ones are generally the easy ones to learn because you'll know most of them already, and so will your learners if they're familiar with the alphabet. So we've got P and B. Be careful, it's not per or ter, it's P and T. Okay. Now, these have an order to them too. They're arranged in pairs. If you say the sound P, P, and then you say the sound B, B, you'll find that you're doing the same thing with your mouth. The difference is that you're vibrating your vocal cords. So if you put your fingers gently on your throat when you're making these sounds, you'll feel a difference. So with this one, P, P, you shouldn't feel any vibration. If you're going purr, you'll feel a vibration, but that's because you've got another sound there. But the P, P shouldn't make any vibration, whereas the B, B, you'll feel a vibration. The same with this pair. T, T should make no vibration, but D, D should make a vibration. You should be able to feel the difference between these things. Okay, and these are called voiced and unvoiced sounds. So all of these top two lines are in that kind of order. So you're doing the same thing with your mouth for these two and these two and these two, exactly the same thing with your mouth. The difference is that one is a voiced sound and one is an unvoiced sound. One you're vibrating your vocal cords and one you're not. Now this is quite helpful for learners because if, for example, they can make the ch, ch, ch sound, which is unvoiced, but they can't make the j, j, j sound because that's not in their language, you can show them that this is the same except this one has voice in it. This is particularly helpful for some sounds. This one, for example, s and z, and this one is sh and zh. This is an unusual sound in English. It's a French sound, comes probably from French mostly. So, you know, learners may not have that sound in their, you know, in their language, and it may be difficult. So that can be quite helpful. Just to let you know what they all are. These ones are obvious. As I say, this one is ch, like chair. This one is j, like Joanne. This one is k and g, obviously, f and v. This one is th, like thin, and this one is th, like this. These two are sounds which tend to be quite difficult for a lot of nationalities. A lot of languages don't have these sounds, and they're tricky for people. S and z is fairly obvious, and this one is sh and zh, as in leisure and pleasure. These three here are all what's called nasal sounds. So this one's n, and this one sounds like an ng on the end of sing, for example. It's ng. So you can see that you can't make these three sounds if you block your nose. If you try blocking your nose and go, nothing will happen. So these three are nasal sounds. And then these ones at the bottom are and this one is not j. This is j up here. This one is y. So in most European languages, the j sound has a y sound, so that's the way to remember it. It's y as in yellow. So have a look at those again and see if you can remember what they all are. Just turn me off for a minute and see if you can remember, then maybe rewind and have a check. Okay, moving on. These are the vowel sounds, the single vowel sounds. Okay, so we've got E as in seek, I as in sit, as in put, as in put, oo as in food, looks like that's fairly obvious, isn't it? This one is super important. It has a name, it's called schwa. It's pronounced It's completely, your mouth's completely relaxed, it's just This is really important, and we'll be coming back to this. It's the most common sound in our language. So it's really important, and we'll look at this more later. This one's similar but longer, This one is also a longer sound, or you can see if they've got dots after them, they're longer sounds. This one's a, as in cat. This one's as in cup. This one's as in car. And this one's o, as in cot. Again, stop me, see if you can remember what they are, and then rewind and check. Something worth looking at here, that's quite interesting, is that the way that they're arranged is that your tongue goes from the front of your mouth with these ones to the back of your mouth with these ones. So if you say E, put your finger on your tongue when you're saying E, and now say the sound oo, and see what happens to your finger. E, oo. And your finger should go back into your mouth. Your tongue will go backwards as you're going through these sounds. And the same for this one. Or. Your tongue goes further back in your mouth as you go along this line. Same for this one. O. You can see that your tongue is going further back. Now this is worth knowing, because if learners have trouble with producing any of these sounds, you can show them. For example, from E to I means that you're going back a bit with your tongue. Through from U to oo means you're going back a bit with your tongue. So that can be helpful. Another thing that's interesting about this is that if you put your finger on your nose and your chin, your thumb on one and finger on your other, you'll see that your mouth gets more open as you go down this way. So this is E, E, A. You'll see that your mouth opens as you go down this line. And the same for here. E, sorry. And this one, So you can see that your mouth is getting more open as you go along. And again, this can be helpful to show to learners, to give them something physical and tangible to be able to make these vowel sounds. The diphthongs, in my experience, these are the ones that are trickier to remember, but they do have a logic to them. So this one is I, ear, ear. So like the thing on the side of your face, your ear. This one is a, like say, play. This one is pretty unusual. It says ooer. For example, like in sewer or bluer. It's not very common, I have to say, in the language, but that's what that one says. This one says oi, as in boy. This one is o. So they do have some sense to them, but they are trickier to remember. That's my feeling. So this one is o. This one over here is air. Don't think there's much sense to that one. You just have to kind of know it. This one is I, as in eye, sky. And this one is ow. So as in cow or how. So these are the ones that I personally found those the trickiest to commit to memory. Those are the diphthongs. So if we look again here at the whole chart, you can see on this particular example we've got a word underneath to help you to remember. This kind of thing is really helpful for you because you know what these words sound like. If you're giving it to learners, I would say don't give them example words, because unless you're very sure that they know how to pronounce those words. I mean, even with this one, I would say here, I think that's a bad example because clearly that could say read or read. The sound is E, so read. So maybe C would be a better example here. This one over here, I pronounce tour like this with an or sound. That's if you pronounce it tour, but I don't. So again, I think that's probably not a great example. So you can see that there are reasons for not having example words on there. It's okay for you, and this might be helpful for you to remember, but I wouldn't do it for learners. Something else that's important is that you make sure when you're writing words in the phonemic script that you include these two lines either side of the word. This is because sometimes it'll look the same. So here with this bit, for example, looks the same as the normal spelling, but in other cases clearly it won't look the same. So you need to make sure that learners don't confuse this with the normal regular spelling of a word. So that's why we always put them in those two lines to show that it's the phonemic alphabet. So here's a really good question. Should we teach it? We've looked at reasons why it might be a good idea. And I would say that yes, do. Especially if you've got a class for a longer period of time, it is worth spending the effort and the time to teach them that. But what I would say is that if you teach them nothing else, and if you learn nothing else, learn this one, schwa, because this is hugely helpful, and clearly it's one symbol, it's very easy to learn. So this would be my advice to you, that if you don't do anything else, if you kind of go, no, this is too much trouble and I haven't got time for my learners, this will take you 2 minutes to teach them, and it'll really repay that 2 minutes in spades. So the sound is okay, it's just that It's called schwa. You don't need to worry about that. I wouldn't tell learners it's called schwa. It's the only one that's got a separate name. So none of the others have got names, don't worry, you don't have to learn their names as well as their sound. But it is really helpful because lots and lots of other sounds weaken to this sound in speech. So one of the common problems before we go on to this is that there are two sounds that sound quite similar. This one is and this one is Now, I don't know if I really use this sound in my particular brand of Brummy English. Not that I'm that Brummy, but I don't think I use this sound very much. This is the way the Queen says cup, and I don't think I say that. I think I say something that's closer to cup. But you'll see this in the dictionary. So this is cup, but cover. So cover. For example, the here is different to the here, which is more relaxed, but they are very similar. So if you're having problems telling these apart, what I would say to you is that schwa, this sound, is never on a stressed syllable. So here you can see that cup is only a single syllable, it's a stressed syllable. Cover, the first syllable here is stressed, so it can't be schwa. So that's what I would say. If you can't really hear the difference very much in your particular brand of English, then just be aware that stressed syllables aren't schwa. However, unstressed syllables often are. So we can look at any vowel and it'll sound as schwa, Here's an example for a, important. It's not important, it's important. Material. The stress here is in the second syllable, material. So that unstressed sound here, it's not material, it's material. Now, it's common that people kind of go, I don't say that, but you'll find if you say the word 4 or 5 times quickly, you do, because that's how it's said. So we've got A there. How about E? E can also sound as, here's a couple of examples, paper, this ER on the end, the E usually sounds as and here, ferocious, it's not ferocious, it's ferocious, that's where the stress is here. I, tangible, it's not tangible. Giraffe, it's not giraffe, well, that one's slightly more dodgy, I guess, but I think if you say it quickly, it's probably giraffe, not giraffe. O, here's a couple of examples. Introduce, it's not introduce or introduce, it's introduce. Because again, the stress is on the first introduce. And phonetics, the stress is on the e here, so this o here, it's not phonetics, it's phonetics. But interestingly, phoneme, the stress is on the o here, so it doesn't say it says o. Phoneme, but phonetics, you see, phonetics. You, I struggled a little bit more with you, but picture, neighbour, this isn't strictly speaking just you, of course it's OU. But I think the point that I'm trying to make here is that most unstressed vowels sound like If you look at any polysyllabic word, you'll find an sound. It's not the rule that every unstressed vowel sounds like this. There are, exceptions, but generally speaking, this is true. So if we look at this, we've got Homer Simpson. So the stress here is on the ho and the sim. That's the stress pattern here. And the unstressed vowels are both schwa, Homer, Simpson. So you can see that it's true for most unstressed vowels. As I said, it isn't always true. For example, here's a couple where it's not. Just stop for a minute and see what sounds you think are in the unstressed syllables. So this syllable and this syllable and the first syllable here. Don't be misled by the spelling. Listen to the sound. Say it a few times and see what you say. Just stop me for a minute and see what happens. Okay, hopefully what you've got is that it's depression. It's not depression, it's I. Despite the spelling, it's not depression, it's depression. And here again, it's not enough, it's enough. So be careful that what you think you say, because of the spelling, isn't necessarily what you do say. So you need to develop an ear for listening to what the sounds are. Schwa is also really helpful for using in connected speech. So if you've got this kind of sentence, for example, learners are going to expect to hear, "Where are you going?" But that's not what they will hear. What they'll hear is, "Where are you going?" So we've got where, so we haven't got are, we've got and we haven't got you, we've got y. Where are you? Where are you going? Where are you going? So if they're expecting to hear "Where are you?" and they hear "Where are you?", understandably they may not get it. So it's really important to highlight this to learners. They like often to say it this way. They want to say it in a correct way, and that's good too. But it's particularly important for receptive purposes. They need to know that's what they're going to hear. Have a look at this one. "What do you do?" is what they're expecting to hear. Just stop me for a minute. Do you think that you can find out what we actually say and see if you can write it in these symbols? Go back to the chart and have a look at the symbols and see if you can write what this actually says. Okay, hopefully you did that. This is what you should have. What do you do? What do you do? What do you do? You might be surprised I haven't got that t sound in at all. I think if you say it quickly, you'll probably find it's not there. What do you do? Because of the voice d next to it. Okay? So these are the kind of things that happen in connected speech that learners need to know about. And you can see here that just knowing schwa will be really helpful. Even if you know nothing else, then schwa is really helpful. So there are lots of resources online to help you to learn this. And here are some of the ones that I think are particularly helpful. So let's have a look at these together. So this is a really great site, cambridgeenglishonline.com, Phonetics Focus. It's got all sorts of different games and quizzes and things to help you to learn them. So for example, with this one, the phonetic flip, you get a word up in phonemic script, bat, and you can flip it to check that you've got the right answer. And you can, for learners, they can hear it. Try that one. Do you know what it is? Okay, did you get it? Well done. Okay, let's try one more. Did you get it? Okay, good. So that kind of thing. This one, shooter symbol's quite fun. You have this question, mouse, and you have to shoot the right symbols. So you have to wait till you've got a m sound up here, which clearly we haven't got yet. So we have to wait until we get one. There we go. We can shoot that, and then we have to look for an ow sound. So can you see one here? It's this one here. And then obviously we need a s sound, which we're going to wait for up here in the consonants. You can see these are consonants and vowels and diphthongs here. So we're still waiting. There we go. And we've got our answer, mouse. So there's all sorts of different ways that you can do this. There's a record and practice one, which is quite nice. There are phonemic flashcards and posters for you to use in your classroom. So there's a lot of things in here which I think are really helpful. I think this is a great site and it's free. So that's something I'd really recommend. The other one that's very good, this one here, if you're trying to learn it, from the British Council, from the teachingenglish.org.uk. Here again you've got the vowels, you've got example words, and it will give you the sounds if you click on them. So again, for you, all your learners, if you're trying to remember what they say, for example, you've got these ones here. Okay, you can see here that a little schwa came up afterwards. That's because he's saying t and not t. It's a quite voiced sound, okay, the way he's saying it. Okay, so that one's quite helpful, I think. And the other one, if you're in class and you've got an IWB, One Stop English have got this site, which is this tool rather, which is really, really good. So it's got the chart on here, and again, if you click on them,
away,
it gives you the sound and an example word. Okay, so that's quite helpful too. It may be that you want to write the chart, use it in a document or something. If you do, this site here is again free and quite helpful. You can test yourself with this as well, but I found it particularly helpful for writing it. So for example, if you're writing mouse, again you can click on the M, you can see the M comes down here, the ow, and you can see it's got an example word to help you, and then S, for example, and then you can just highlight that, right click, copy or cut it and paste it into a document. So that's really helpful if you want to write it for your learners or whatever. So that's a good way of doing it. The other thing that you can do is simply in Microsoft Word. If you go to Microsoft Word and you go to Insert and Symbol, there are a lot of symbols there. You have to kind of search through the first couple of times, but because I've recently used schwa, you can see here, and some of the others, it's there very easily. So I can just go to symbol and actually schwa's just there. So particularly for that, that's a quick and easy way of using that if you want to. So here are the website addresses for those things. They'll be on the site as well. So just quickly to the end, thinking about using the chart judiciously is what I would say to you, that you don't have to write out all of the words with all of the symbols, but that it can be used in moderation, if you like. So that, for example, it can be used to show that pronunciation isn't as hard as it looks. If you look at that kind of word, it looks really tricky, but actually the pronunciation is just that, th-r. Only 2 syllables. It looks much trickier than that. So that can be quite reassuring to learners. The same for that one. Try and write the symbols, see if you can write the symbols for this. Okay, if you've had a go, that's what it should look like. One thing I would say is a good way to learn this is simply to write something using the symbols every day for 5 minutes, and you'll have it in a week. Copy something out of the newspaper, write your thoughts for the day, write your diary, anything you like. Write something using the symbols every day, 5 minutes, you will have it in a week. It's not that difficult. Also with this, of course, you could just use the off bit. That's the difficult bit. The k clearly isn't a difficult sound. So you could just, use it judiciously. Another way that it's useful is to highlight unexpected sounds. So here, for example, it's likely that learners will think this says image. Why wouldn't they? But it doesn't. It's image. So it's actually the I sound that's tricky here, because you would think it would say age, but it doesn't. So just putting up that can be helpful. Same with something here. What do you think is the tricky sound in this word? Okay, so hopefully that's what you've got, or maybe just that. It's the j. It's not les chaud, les saw, it's les je. So that's difficult. So it's worth highlighting those things. The other thing that you could highlight is missing words. So how would you write this in the chart? Stop me again and see if you can write this. Okay, that's what you should have. Alternatively, of course, you could just write up the spelling and do something like that to show them that it's a silent letter. That's another way of doing things. We haven't got much time left, and I don't want to spend too much time on activities today. But here was one which was quite nice. It came from Adrian Tennant on the One Stop site. This is the URL here if you'd like to look at the whole article. He does have other ideas as well. I think this is quite nice. These books, this one, the Adrian Underhill Sound Foundations, is kind of the classic pronunciation text. It's recently been re-released. It's very, very good. So if you can get hold of that or read a copy of that from your library, it's really good. This book is just being released. These guys are both quite famous for their pronunciation work, and this looks like a really interesting book. I haven't seen it. It does say it's forthcoming, so I guess it should be just about out now, in Delta, and that looks very good and has lots of practical ideas. It says, I haven't seen it, but it does look good. So if you have any other ideas or questions, please do put them on the forum. I hope to hear from you, and I hope that's been helpful for you. Take care. Bye bye.